Sweet Boxing Science YouTube channel. It's the afternoon after the night before of a special night of boxing. Perhaps the last time we'll see the great Alexander Usyk in the UK. Throw in some controversy with Manny Pacquiao's return. Did he win that fight? I'm sure we're going to get into that. And there's a few other bits to pick up on. Before I get started, Mr. JFT, how are we on this Sunday, my friend?
I'm good, man. Good. Had a good night last night. Excited to review it all with you. Thanks for having me.
No, pleasure. Thank you for coming on, mate. Yeah, it was a good night of action. Wembley Stadium, a rain-soaked Wembley Stadium. I'm sure there was a few nervous people twitching around during the day as the thunderstorms were rolling through this part of the country. Let's start with the main event, mate. I mean, picking Usyk to win isn't exactly the hardest prediction any of us are going to make in the next 12 months, without shadow of a doubt. But Usyk to win early and to make it look as comfortable as he did, it was a special performance from someone who just seems to constantly deliver special performances, wasn't it?
It was, but I wasn't surprised. I'd called it. I said he'd get that fight done in under 7 rounds. I was a couple of rounds out. You could see from the minute it started that he was just relaxed, comfortable, putting constant pressure on Daniel. Daniel was biting on every single feint, so he was using a lot of nervous energy. And by the end of round 3, Daniel Dubois was blowing out of his backside. As fit as he may be, it takes a lot of physical and mental strength when you've got somebody that's just constantly throwing feints, jabbing. I was surprised that Dubois didn't start fast with his jab. He looked out of his depth. To be honest, he looked worse than he did in the first one. He just looked void of ideas. People will say that, that's not the case and he's improved, which we would like to say that he is, or does look improved, or his performances prior to this have given us the impression that it improved. But last night just proved that he is levels below, as everybody else is levels below the likes of Alexander Usyk. He is a generational talent that, nobody's got close to beating yet. No one's got close. Whatever way you sugarcoat it, nobody's really got close. He's never looked out of control. A couple of times he's been buzzed in fights. He took a couple of decent right hands last night, but he's teeth tough and has one of the best boxing IQs I've probably ever seen.
Yeah, mate, I completely agree with you. Look, from the very first jab exchange, so obviously Dubois sort of comes at a jog out of his corner and he looks to get straight in Usyk's face, which you see and you go, okay, right, here we go. But then they had that very first jab exchange and I went, nothing's changed. You just knew from the way Usyk slipped to the right, didn't he, to miss Dubois' jab and then landed his own one, and it's made Daniel take a step back. You went, nothing's changed. This could be a long night for Dubois, and that's unfortunately how it turned out, isn't it? Look, you can have all the conversations you want about Dubois improved, Dubois done this, Dubois done that. He's still a top-level heavyweight, not an elite heavyweight, if that makes sense. And last night we saw the difference between, to use a football analogy, the top of the Champions League and the, Conference League. That was the difference last night. It was an elite fighter who will beat anyone put in front of him, and someone in Daniel Dubois who we still don't know what his ceiling is. We still don't know where he's going to hit maybe in this next generation, post-Usyk, post-Fury, but for the time being, he's still comfortably a level below Alexander Usyk. And when the finish came, mate, it was emphatic, wasn't it?
Yeah, but again, you could see all the signs were there. Once it got past 3 rounds, I'd said to my missus while watching it with, this won't go any more than a couple more rounds. It will not go a couple more rounds. You could see that Daniel was fatigued. With fatigue comes your decision-making then becomes slower. As I'd said previously, the likes of Usyk, Lomachenko, Mayweather, Hopkins, the greats, do things habitually. They don't have to think about it, so it's repetition. So when Dubois is thinking, right, I've got to slip and counter this, Usyk can do that naturally. It just comes with experience. And yeah, the writing was on the wall. Daniel's best chance was to overraw Usyk in the first couple of rounds, catch him unawares and knock him out. But as his power starts to deplete, the punches become less devastating, and you could see that it was a matter of time before he got stopped. I wasn't expecting it to be sort of a concussive knockout as such. I know he got up, but he was absolutely knocked cold. I wasn't expecting it to be like that. I thought it'd be more of a sagging on the rope, sort of an accumulation of punches. But what a shot! What a shot to finish it with. You know, to have the wherewithal to come out of the fire and catch him so clean with that. You saw him put his head down, so he's expecting something back as he throws. He sort of puts his head down, bites down on his gum shield, and throws it with power, and that's all she wrote, man. You know, but in terms of where does Daniel sit? Look, I think the AJ fight clouded a lot of people's judgment. I think AJ 2 years prior to that, with his bottle still, that would have been a different fight. But AJ's shot is shot to pieces. Yeah. AJ was a confidence fighter, and once his confidence has been taken away from him, he was a shell of himself going into the Dubois fight. He got hurt in the first round and never recovered. And I think that possibly gave Team Dubois an unrealistic expectation of what they could do. Obviously, they see him in the gym, and you know they're not daft, but they've got to sell it as such. And I felt this week going into the fight that some of the stuff that Don Charles was saying was setting him up for failure. He was putting a little bit too much pressure on Daniel, sort of dismissing Usyk in some regard. You know, they cheated us out of it, and they knew what was going to happen, and we'll see this time. And as I'd said when me, you, and Sam spoke, that Usyk's going to take great pleasure in battering Daniel. I know you go out there to beat your opponent, but he's going to beat him up. I think I'd said it'd be a ferocious, meticulous beatdown, and it would end in under 7 rounds. And we pretty much got that. It was close enough for the first couple of rounds. Daniel was in it. He was losing. I had him 2 or 3 rounds down going into the 4th. But he was in those rounds still. But as I said, after round 3, his power bar just completely dropped. Yeah. He couldn't defend himself properly. And when you're fighting somebody like that who's got a boxing IQ that's up there with some of the all-time greats, and I think we need to start speaking about Alexander Usyk as potentially one of the all-time greats. I'm talking about, like, you know, Ray Robinson, Ray Leonard, Ali, some of the very, very great names, Lennox Lewis. You know, I think Usyk has to be lauded in the company of greats such as those names that I've just reeled off.
Yeah, mate, that's the conversation to come on to in a minute. I think there's one main criticism that some people have thrown at Usyk as a heavyweight, and that is he doesn't knock people out. He wins on points.
Check that out.
Or, you know, the first Dubois fight, Dubois, not saying he quit, but he took a knee off a jab and then didn't want any more of it. Last night, it was almost as if he was ramming it down people's throats. Oh, I don't stop people anymore.
I said that to you at dinner.
Check it out. I thought it was going to be, I said, didn't I, during the week, I went slightly later than you, but I said an Usyk stoppage, and I said I thought he would dismantle Dubois and stop him convincingly. And that's what we got. Look, the best fighters, when they smell blood, they seldom let the opponent off the hook. They seldom allowed him to breathe. And that's exactly what happened with Usyk last night. 30 seconds before that moment, Dubois is probably thinking, all right, I'm getting into a bit of a rhythm here. It's going to be hard work. And then one shot changes the whole momentum. And Usyk, being the predator he is, even at the age he's at now, he's still showing that he has knockout power. And that's what he's capable of doing.
He's always had knockout power, and he can always do that. What it is with Usyk, as Mayweather used to do, once he gets in front, he just coasts and doesn't take any risks. But what he did last night is, as I'd said before, and I'm not bleating on about, you know, I'm the know-it-all, but it wasn't hard to predict. If you know boxing, you know what you're seeing. Usyk's just better than him. And I think this time, like I'd said about the weight, he just didn't need to deplete himself anymore. So he took off as much as he had to. Didn't exert himself. And he did that in the fight. He just found his rhythm. And then he thought, do you know what? I'll sit down on my shots now. And just sat down on his shots. And the first couple of big shots he caught him with, he knocked him over, recovers, knocks him out. It's just, you know, class from start to finish, man.
As simple as that. He never takes risks unnecessarily. I mean, think back to when he beat AJ the first time round. He done that pretty much, boxing off with the back foot, mainly jabbing and a left hand over the top until the 12th round, where we all know AJ pretty much slumped into the ropes as the bell rang to end the fight. He doesn't take risks. But last night, it's almost as if he wanted to make a statement. You question whether I was, you know, legitimately hurt by a body shot in the first fight. You say I don't knock people out anymore. Here's my first knockout since Tony Bellew. Look at what I'm going to do. First conclusive knockout. Of course, he's had the TKOs of Weatherspoon and Dubois the first time round, but it's his first conclusive knockout since what he done to Bellew, as we've touched on before. look, the all-time greats and pound for pound list is a mythical thing because you're comparing different eras. But you've touched on it yourself, and I'm going to agree with you. Alexander Usyk needs to be spoken about in the all-time Pantheon of pound for pound greats. 3-time, 2-weight division, undisputed champion. You don't do that unless you are a very special fighter. You don't go up to a weight class that isn't naturally yours, fight much bigger guys, more Fury than Dubois. The weight difference he had overcame in both of the Fury fights was close to 40 pounds, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Where does he sit for you, mate? Let's go heavyweights first before we go all time. Where does he sit amongst heavyweights all time for you?
Top 5. I think I've got Muhammad Ali, Lennox Lewis. I've got my top 5 somewhere. Just give me a second. I have actually got my top 5. I can't remember it off the top of my head.
Well, I'll go where you're looking, mate. I agree. I'd have him in my top 5. I've got Ali, Lewis, Holyfield, possibly Tyson, and then he fits in there for me because, look, yes, it's the first time in a 4-belt era we've had an undisputed champion, but it's just how he does it, mate. Like we say, he could have, if he wanted to last night, boxed for 12 rounds. Instead, he went for a conclusive finish. Anyway, let's have a look.
Okay, so my top 5 is Muhammad Ali, Jack Johnson, Lennox Lewis. I would put Alexander Usyk in at number 4.
Yep.
And then it would be Larry Holmes.
Yeah, of course. Can't forget Larry Holmes.
And then you're talking Evander Holyfield. Who have I got here? Jack Dempsey, Sonny Liston, Floyd Patterson, Ezra Charles. You could reel a load off, but my top 5, I think he makes my top 5 just for what he's done. I mean, he's emulated what Lennox Lewis has done. He's now 3-time undisputed. I meant in terms of Olympic, then turning over. But the fact that he did it in another division, cruiserweight, and then moved up, so unified one division, moves up, unifies another division. I will say this, that his era doesn't have as many killers in as like the Tyson, Holyfield, Holmes to a degree era. You had a lot more heavyweights, but the heavyweight division as it was then was more... It's still one of the premier divisions, but not as it was. So I believe that he doesn't get as much credit because of the names on his record. I mean, look, he's had his 3rd rematch last night. He's sort of lapping the division. It's getting to like, Man City winning the league 4 times. It gets boring.
Yeah.
I don't want to see Moses Atoma thrown in there. I just don't believe that Atoma's done anything to deserve a shot. And I would hate to see Usyk lose to somebody that's undeserving of the shot. I know that's crazy because if he beat him, then he's obviously deserving of the shot.
Yeah, of course.
But it's about age now. Usyk's nearly 40. He's been in some, I don't want to say tough wars. He hasn't been in any wars, really. The cruiserweight probably had his hard fights down at cruiser.
Greatest, yeah.
Yeah, was tougher for him. But yeah, he's top 5 of all time for me now. He's up there. If there's 5 on Mount Rushmore, then get your chisel out, guy, because Usyk's getting put up there for me. There's nothing more for him to prove, as far as I'm concerned. He's proved everything. He's won everything. I would love to see him sail off in the sunset. I do not want to see him fight the Disney Kid. I think Joe Parker would be the only deserving, but I'd rather see Joe Parker fight for a vacant title when Usyk vacates. I'd like to see Caballel versus Parker.
Yeah, look, I think you're right. He doesn't have anything left to do now. He is lapping the field, especially, I mean, his body of work at heavyweight, like you say, 6 of his 8 heavyweight fights now have been with the same 3 guys because of rematches. And the only, could you argue, there is an argument that he didn't need any of the rematches. We know why he's under Dubois one, because he wanted undisputed again. So we get why last night happened. He didn't need to do AJ, but that bullshit rematch clause for champions that shouldn't be in contracts was there. So we got that rematch. Yeah. And Turkey does what Turkey wants. So that's how we got the rematch last year.
So we're getting the big announcement on the 26th. I'm assuming it's going to be Fury Usyk 3. He said there's going to be some massive fights and massive announcements on the 26th, which is next week, I believe. Next Saturday, is it?
Next Saturday. Yeah, next Saturday. So,
and Usyk, Tyson didn't go last night. He was pounding the streets of Morecambe in training. The world knows that he lost those fights on politics, not the fact that he got his ass whooped. He didn't get his ass whooped, but he got beat decisively for me. First one was close, second one wasn't. I don't know whether it's shtick with Tyson Fury. Is it shtick, or is he that daft? And he can't be. No one's that daft to think he won those fights. Surely to God, it's shtick. And then we had the Disney kid in the ring facing off, who says AJ first, Usyk next. I mean,
how did Usyk not burst out laughing? Sorry, mate. Facing off with Jake Paul.
You could see that he was trying not to laugh. But look, the type of money that they're talking, I mean, the fight might get made. I hope not. But, you know.
Money talks, mate.
Money talks, man. Unfortunately, it's just the way the world works.
I think, look, before we move on from the main event, and we're going to touch on, I think, a couple of other bits from this Wembley card. Daniel Dubois, the question now will be, how does he rebuild? Everyone's knee-jerk reaction is to blame the people around him. So I've seen a lot of, shade being thrown at Charles and Farrell today. First of all, that's a load of crap.
He could have had the ghost of Emmanuel Stewart.
Yeah.
The Wembley, the clouds above Wembley Park, and Emmanuel Stewart beams from heaven giving him instructions. He'd have still got his ass whooped. It's nothing to do. You can't blame the corner. They can only prepare their man so much. What happens inside the ropes, yes, it's influenced by your corner, but when you're up against somebody like that, it doesn't matter. He could have had a horseshoe in one of his gloves and would probably still have lost. Just go back down and fight someone like Bakole, Zhang. Fight someone in the top 5. Caballel, maybe. I think Caballel would beat him, if I'm honest. But he needs a Chisora would be a good fight. I know, but I'm just thinking of guys that could maybe get him back on the horse. Bakole would be a good fight. I'd like to see him fight someone like Bakole.
Yeah, you've basically answered the question I was going to ask. I don't think we need to see Daniel Dubois dropping back down to domestic level. We still want to see him at a fringe world level. Look, you've just reeled off some good names. The obvious big thing now is that was, he picks up a vacant title. That was his first defense. He's not a champion anymore. So he's going to go back into every governing body's ranking system. He'll be in the
Wardley.
top. Yeah, that's where I was going to go with it. Wardley for the WBA interim is potentially an option. Look, there's options out there for Dubois. By no means the end, and I don't think we're going to see him splitting from Don Charles either. That's the relationship.
No. I think that needs to say. I will say one thing though. I mean, I'm not. I do work in operations sometimes within my role, but I don't work in logistics. But how did they manage to get 40,000 people into their seats between Lawrence Okole's fight finishing and the main event starting? I don't care what anyone says. There was nowhere near 90,000 people in that stadium last night. There weren't. No way. When Lawrence Okole fight finished, I'm being flippant when I say it was half full, but I reckon there was 60,000 in there max. Max. There was a lot of empty seats there last night. A lot.
Yes.
It wasn't full. As soon as the lights went down, it felt full, and it was a raucous crowd. But yeah, there weren't 90,000 bums on seats last night.
Be interesting to see if Turkey released the gate numbers, didn't it?
It wasn't a fight people were clambering for, as much as they'll tell us that. There were 20,000 comps there last night. Had to have been. I was shocked that it was so empty for the co-main. I mean, I know it was Lawrence Okole, but even still, logistically, you can't get 40,000 people in the seats in 15 minutes. It just doesn't work. So, yeah, I'd be interested to see the numbers. I reckon you'd be closer to 70 there last night than 90. But look, shit, man, 70,000 seats and some of those ringside seats cost an absolute fortune. So it made money last night. It made money. They got my 40 quid. But yeah, it didn't. Look, no one sat here shocked. My son picked Usyk, more to do with he likes Daniel and but realistically he knew. We've spoke this morning and he knew that, I wanted Daniel to win as a Brit.
Of course we did.
I love Usyk. You can't dislike the guy. I hope he sails off into a Stone Island branded sunset and enjoys himself for the rest of his life, man. He's earned it.
Oh, mate, rocking up Winner Stoney for an away day at Wembley was just that
Class,
did
man.
make me smile.
Class.
Yeah.
He said the other day he had his last bit of training. He says going for double duck, double rice, a sauna, Stone Island, and then maybe the pub.
Yeah,
God
maybe
love
he
him.
is. Gotta love him. Look, Usyk will rank. I hope we don't see him again. And if we do see him again, Parker or Caballero, I don't want to see anything else from him. One of the two interims, that's who I'd want to see him in with. Daniel Dubois can come again, absolutely. So let's just touch on the undercard quickly, mate. Lawrence Okoli put in a performance against Kevin Lerena. That's where I'm going to go with it. We slagged off Okoli. We were vocal in our criticism of how heavy he is. And Joe Gallagher, as I came on to do this live, is currently having an argument with Nick Peake from the Fight Disciples over said criticism of Okoli's weight. According to Gallagher, Okoli tore his bicep in round 1. I'm not sure if that's true, but that is what he's put out today. You know, Joe Gallagher, when he does his after fight.
I'm not surprised, throwing fucking 300 pounds behind it. I'm surprised it didn't pop out of its fucking joint.
Yeah, look, that was a very solid 10 rounds from Okoli. Look, Lerena was disappointing. I will get that out there. I expected to see more from the South African.
I did myself.
But Lawrence Okoli, look, he got the most amount of action he's had since the Chris Billam-Smith fight, which was 2 years ago now. So a good 30 minutes behind him. But what do you think's next for him? I mean, he's WBC number 1, so you know what could be next for him, but he's not on a level even of Caballero, never mind Usyk, is he?
No, he looked absolutely awful. Condition-wise, his shorts were pulled up to his chest.
Yes.
His belly was, it's just not a good look. I get your heavyweight, but Lawrence is better than that. Prove me wrong. And I was straight on socials to congratulate him. I was disappointed in Lerena. I felt that he was overcautious and wasn't slipping the jab and trying to get inside. He was waiting and trying to counter him with looping rights and lefts, which after 2 or 3 rounds you could see it coming, and it was rinse and repeat. As our No Punches Pulled co-host Sam would have said. Look, there's not a right lot. For me, he should have stayed at Bridger and just cleaned up there and won world titles. Look, he's not going to get a shot. He has done nothing to justify getting a shot other than his ranking, which we all know where rankings, where WBC and WBA are concerned, they throw them out like bloody toys you get in cereal boxes. He needs a top level fight. He needs a proper fight. And again, no disrespect to Lerena, he's good and of a certain level. But if you're ranked WBC number 1, then you should be fighting somebody ranked WBC number, 1 to 5.
Yeah.
So he needs to be fighting the likes of Caballero, Joseph Parker. I mean, those fights are probably not going to come to fruition because they're hopefully going to get a world title fight. I'd like to see him fight someone like Zhang. Dare I say Joe Joyce, Okoli. Some of the names that we've said for Dubois. Do we see Okoli Dubois?
Look,
London,
I think the
London
first
fight.
Yeah, I think the first thing
versus the suburbs of Surrey or Hampshire or wherever, the mean streets that Daniel pounded with rose petals underneath his feet.
I'm looking at Okoli's bicep now, and to be fair, that's going to be. We probably won't see him again this year, which is the metaphor of Lawrence Okoli's career in recent years. It is incredibly stop-start.
Yeah.
But who knows what the lay of the land is going to be. By the time he comes back, if Usyk's retired and obviously vacated, Caballero would have got his shot. Look, the division will look very different, I think, the next time we see Lawrence Okoli. I don't have much else to say on the fight, mate. It was a one-sided victory, but it was a very cumbersome performance. I mean...
Yeah. I was just going to say, as boring as Lawrence Okoli is, that's probably one of his more exciting fights last night because there was a little bit of danger from Lerena in stages. But, he just did what he had to do. It was a safety-first performance. Didn't take any risks, really. And he couldn't exert himself because he'd have been gassed. He was disgustingly shaped. It was awful. I don't want to see him in that type of shape again. Look, he's going to have bicep surgery or certainly rehab. So he can work on his cardio, can't he? I'd like to see him at 225, 230 maybe.
240 max, I'd say. Around 240 would be the max.
240 max. Last night was not a good look. But yeah, he needs a proper fight. needs a proper fight for me. But as you said, we're not going to see him now for at least 6 months.
Yeah, look, if it's if that bicep injury is as bad as the photos show, then I would say it'll be at least 6 7 months before we see him again.
Yeah.
One other thing I want to touch on the Wembley cards: Edmondson robbed against Lupin. Not robbed, but
robbed strong, man.
Yeah,
I had him winning. Look, I had
him winning as well. That's what I will say. I had him winning.
I've watched it twice since. So I had him winning by 2 live. I've watched it twice and I've tried to score it subjectively, and I've given it Lumin once, and then I've given it a draw.
Okay.
So, but I've seen different things every time I've watched it. It is subjective. Robbery's strong.
Well, robbery
could have gone either way. I think he'll feel hard done by because, as I said, watching it live, I thought he'd done enough. But the judges saw something different. But Robbery's strong. But it's one of those, isn't it? I'd like to see it again.
I've only watched it once. I scored it 97-93 to Edmondson. I could have maybe got it to a draw with how close some of the rounds were, but I went with Edmondson's aggression, I think, a bit more. Yeah, robbery was the wrong word for me to use. Let's not start.
But I know what you mean. Yeah,
it's disappointing. I mean, I obviously knew the scorecards going into it from obviously keeping me updated all night. But when those 10 rounds finished, I was still going, no, Edmondson's won it, even knowing what was coming. That was disappointing. But we'll leave Wembley behind. Queensbury roll on down to Bournemouth as a domestic barnstormer in the shapes of Garner and Belotti next weekend. A fight I'm very much looking forward to seeing.
Me too.
Where do you want to go next, mate? Do you want to do Texas or do you want to do Vegas?
It's entirely up to you, man. Take your pick.
I mean, let's go Bam. I mean, 5 championship fights in a row down at that weight class. He's now won by stoppage. He's added the WBO strap to his resume and he moves on to the Puma Martinez fight in Saudi in November. Bam Rodriguez is box office. I don't care what anyone says. What do you make of his performance last night against Cathy?
Did exactly what he said he was going to do. I mean, we called him out for potentially, slipping on a banana skin because we don't like it when fights are made. But look, if you're that good, then you can afford yourself that luxury of being able to forecast your fights. It was Bam, destructive, spiteful, classy, not scared to plant his feet and have a go, but also be slick. Counterpunch. It had a bit of all sorts last night. It had counterpunching. It had pressure, power. As I said, spite, venom. There's 100 superlatives I could reel off. But look, he's one of the greats around his weight division, his era. I think people need to start putting a little bit of respect on his name. He's not really lauded as much as he should be, really. And I think that's just because he's in one of the lower weight divisions. So a lot of the casuals don't see him fight. But as you said, he is absolute box office. Absolutely box office. And, just got him out of there in, what was it, round 10?
11.
Was it? I thought it was 10.
10, 11, it was near the back end of the fight, wasn't it? Let's check.
I thought it was 10, but irrespective of that, he did what he had to do. And, I mean, do you give 10th round stoppage?
I was 10th, yeah.
Do you give Martinez a chance? Because I thought Cafu would cause him problems last night. Once he figured him out, it's similar to Usyk Dubois, the writing was on the wall. Once he'd sort of figured out his movement and his timing.
Mate, genuinely, I don't give anyone at Superfly a chance with Bam. That's me being really honest. I think Bam Rodriguez is the best at this division, and it's going to be very similar to what we've seen with Inoue over the years. His challenge is going to come when he starts to move up more, and he isn't naturally the bigger guy in there, so he's giving away some size. I
thought Yafai might have given him a fight until I saw him get battered. Yes, he got beat up by a cheat, but still, Bam would knock him out, I think.
Yeah, I think that would look similar to how the Sonny Edwards fight looked with Bam. Yafai would probably start well and be competitive and probably nicking rounds, but then when Bam wants to move through the gears, he'll do exactly that, won't he? As he's done time and time again. sensational stoppage. Very excited now to get him out in Saudi in November. And look, we say he's not getting the plaudits he deserves from the wider public. Well, he's going to go on a Riyadh season card, so that should hopefully, get more eyeballs on him. One other thing I want to touch on in this card: Diego Pacheco made absolute light work of Trevor McCumbee, an absolute shutout for me. That was
gutted me that.
One of the performances of the night, wasn't it?
Yeah, gutted me because I like McCumbee. But Pacheco is a dangerous fighter, and he proved last night that he's one of the best in his division. Props to him, man, because that was clinical.
He's another fighter similar to Christian Mbili that's being held up by Canelo holding all the belts. Look, I say this with Canelo, greatest respect to Canelo. The sooner the Crawford fight's out of the way and he probably retires and all the belts become vacant, the more exciting 168 will become again, because look at the top end of that division. I mean, just Pacheco and Mbili alone are two very exciting fighters that should be fighting for world titles, but unfortunately it's not going to come until Canelo moves on. So I hope that comes soon, just for a division point of view, because 168 needs some new life being breathed into it. And you had Hamza Shiraz after what he done to Belanga last weekend. There's some good fighters there that deserve to be fighting for the belts and not waiting around for the Mexican superstar to decide what he's going to do.
Yeah, I think we might see Hamza Shiraz face one of these two in the coming months, because I think regardless what happens with Canelo and Crawford, I don't think we'll see Canelo until the middle of next year.
Yeah.
If he fights again, depending on what happens.
Yeah, I agree, mate. Look, Mbili against Shiraz would be a great fight. Pacheco against Shiraz would possibly be a less exciting fight. I think their styles would cancel each other out a little bit, and we might end up in a bit of a standoff. But definitely, look, Shiraz deserves a shot against one of those two, and it could be for a vacant title, depending on what happens in September. But we're going to move on to Vegas and talk about Manny Pacquiao, mate. Father Time shows no limits in that sense. But
who's going to make me an offer? Who's going to make me an offer for my fucking a paperweight? Because I'm sick at sight of it. I've got a Manny Pacquiao glove here if anybody wants to bid me on it. Signed by the man himself. I've got a picture of him signing it. No bought merchandise in the Murphy household. We don't buy merchandise. I've never bought a piece in my life, and I've got loads.
You said, mate.
All organic.
I love it. But I think
Manny's back, man. Manny's back.
But how bad is Barrios?
Terrible. And that's why we picked. Conor Benn should have took that fight. Conor Benn should have took the fight. He would now be the world champion, and he'd be coming off a fight against Manny Pacquiao, maybe. Horrendous. Horrific. I gave Manny that fight by 3 or 4 rounds. 2 at worst. Manny's not back. Manny's 46-year-old.
No.
He got himself in fight shape for a 46-year-old Manny Pacquiao. He's not a patch on what he was. But Barrios offered absolutely nothing, and I picked Pacquiao to win the fight from the second it was made. But, I was disappointed in Barrios. Very, very disappointed. He had an opportunity last night to get a legend on his resume. He has all the attributes to be able to win, but he just, he's. I hate saying this when people say, he was the weaker of the champions and his easiest opportunity to win a world title, but he proved those statements to be correct last night and sort of rolled over for Pacquiao, and he can count himself very lucky to have got a draw this morning. He can count himself very lucky this morning to still be a world champion.
Look, I scored it 117-111 Pacquiao when I watched it this morning. Right. That's me being honest. I just think Manny... Look, we're not going to say Manny Pacquiao looks in career best nick or delivered a career best performance. He unfortunately showed the limitations of Barrios. I mean, I'd love to know the stat on this, and it is something I'm going to look at. When was the last time a champion started their defense, their reign, with 2 draws in a row? Because that's what Barrios has done now. He had the draw on the Jake Paul cards, and he's had a draw again last night. He's still not technically won as a world. He's still not technically won as a world champion. And look, you talk about Conor Benn should be taking the fight. I tell you what, Crocker Donovan's going to be getting announced at some point soon. I'd be saying to Eddie Hearn, both of them, look, if we win this, Barrios is a unification, because no no offense, both Crocker and Donovan beat Barrios. And imagine you just pick up the IBF and you become a 2-belt holder. That's the monopoly you've got. Then you've got the monopoly to negotiate with someone like Brian Norman. Are we going to see Pacquiao again? Are we going to see this fight again?
I think he'll rematch him. I think he has to, doesn't he? I think he's got momentum off the back of last night's performance, and I think people will want to see it again. I mean, I'd watch it again. You know, I even though I picked Manny, I only picked him based on an old 46-year-old Manny having enough to get past Barrios. Barrios is not that good. He's just had the right fight at the right time, got the belt. I mean, as you said, he's got a stat there that'll never be broken. That stat will never be broken, and he deserved to lose last night. He didn't. Team Pacquiao can feel aggrieved because I don't think a draw is a fair result. You know, we're talking about Edmondson being, you know, some people saying robbery. I think last night was bordering on robbery. I've watched it twice and I can't give a draw either of those. And you know I love a draw and bet a draw and bet the draw and won, but didn't think that I would win. We'll see that fight again, I think.
Yeah, it's... Look, Barrios, I've just been looking at there while you're talking. So Barrios was the interim champion, won the interim belt when it was vacant, got upgraded to full champion, and has had 2 draws since. It's not the most awe-inspiring title run. Like you say, I do think we see it again. I say unfortunately because, you know, Barrios is limited. And, yeah, look, Manny Pacquiao waking up this morning as world champion and then probably retiring again would have been like the fairy tale story. And we said all week, didn't we? You don't get fairy tales in boxing, but Barrios may be able to give Manny a fairy tale. The judges just didn't get the scripts. Not often you say that in Vegas, is it? But the judges didn't get the script last night.
No.
On the undercards, Sebastian Fundora forced Tim Tszyu to quit. Bulldoze through him. I'm happy to admit I was wrong on that one. Look, Fundora started at a fast pace and started at a Tim Tszyu style pace, didn't he? But Tim just couldn't get inside the long levers of Fundora, had him in all sorts of trouble in the 6th, battered him in the 7th, and then I don't often like seeing fighters pulled out by their corner on the stall, but that was the right decision, wasn't it, by Tim's corner not to send him out for the 8th? He was.
I think Tim had said he said something along the lines of "I'm not good enough," or he did say something like that. Again, I think I've had a really good weekend this weekend. I think I called him to stop him. I'll have to go back and look on Sam's predictions, but I'm pretty sure I called a stoppage. But you know, I take no great pleasure in seeing a fighter have to admit defeat, and Tszyu showed his limitations last night. I think I've said this before. I don't think he's as good as he's been made out to be. He's good, but not that good. Fundora's, I mean, he's 6'6" for God's sake. He could fight at bloody middleweight. He's super middleweight. Sorry, he's massive, but did what I expected him to do last night. I just think his skill level is exponentially better than Tszyu. Tszyu's tough, has decent fundamentals, but he's been found wanting at world level. He just can't make that step up. To get to the level he's at, he's fantastic, but that's his level. He's domestic level. Look, let's not beat around the bush. He's a domestic level fighter that's failed at world level 3 times now.
Yeah. Look, exceeded his expectations. What he's done, Tim Tszyu. We had the conversation, didn't we, earlier in the week? Will Tszyu retire if he loses? I think the manner of that defeat, he wasn't beaten on points, he was beaten up and broken down, may tell him that he should lean towards retirement, if that makes sense. He wasn't like, I lost on points, I was unlucky. He was overwhelmed and beaten up, unfortunately, last night, which is a shame because, look, yes, he's limited, but Tim Tszyu was always an exciting fight. You never wanted to miss a Tim Tszyu fight because it was going to be all action. A bit similar to Costa Tszyu back in the day, you know. Costa Tszyu was always in exciting fights. Tim's carried on that tradition for the family. For Sebastian Fundora, where does it look? 154 is an interesting division, isn't it? Boots is there now. Virgil Ortiz is there now. Conor Benn, Josh Kelly, etc. Trying to throw a few domestic names in there. What do you reckon he does now? Look, that was an ordered fight, so we'll be allowed to take a voluntary next. Do you reckon he'll roll the dice maybe with an Ortiz or a Boots, or do you think he'll maybe steer into an easier path?
No, I think we might see one of the Brits get him. I think one of the Brits might get him. You mentioned Josh Kelly there. I think that'd be a good fight. I think Josh Kelly's got the style and the awkwardness and the speed to give him a good fight if he can stay away. I know that's difficult with him being so long, but I could see Josh Kelly beating him on points if he didn't get stopped. But Josh Kelly's not going to plant his feet and trade with him. Shu likes to trade. He's a tough guy as such. I think we might see him fight one of the Brits. I don't think he'll fight Ortiz. I don't think he'll fight Boots yet. I think he wants another fight or so before he tests himself at that level. I'm excited to see what I think we'll see him out again either late this year or early next year.
You never know with PBC, though. Like, you never know what they're going to do. I mean, I'm just looking here at the 154 rankings according to BoxRec. I mean, Xander Zayas is fighting next week for a world title, so that's a unification option. Bikram Murtazaliev is another option that's there, isn't it? Obviously, Terence is doing his thing with Canelo, so we're not going to see that. Then below him, you've got Madrimov, Erickson Lubin, Boachuk, Charles Cromwell, Conor Benn, Callum Walsh, Josh Kelly.
Lubin's a good fight.
I think Lubin could be. I think knowing how knowing how PBC do things as well, I think we're going to possibly see an Erickson Lubin type fight for him, which is nothing wrong. But then you do want to see him go after those other belts next year. Look,
yeah, you want to see him in a unification.
Expect Xander Zayas to pick up the world title next weekend, allow him to have a defense, and then possibly look at making that rematch. Unification and getting it on early next year. But anything else you want to cover from last night, mate, boxing wise?
Not really. No, I think we've covered most of the main fights. It was a good night. As I say, I've watched them all at least twice, and they were as good the second time as they were the first.
Yeah, look, from Alexander Usyk solidifying his legacy at heavyweight to Manny Pacquiao somehow not becoming a world champion at 46 years of age to Bam Rodriguez giving us more reasons to wax lyrical about him. Boxing did deliver this weekend, and that's the main thing. Sometimes you get a stacked weekend on paper, and it doesn't deliver. We've seen it a few times, haven't we, recently? So at least it's a weekend that's delivered. But Lottie Garner next weekend, Clarissa Shields back at heavyweight for the little that's worth.
Can we forget this fucking Layla Ali nonsense, right? Dragging Layla Ali, who's been retired for 15 years
isn't she?
For money. It doesn't prove that you're the greatest of all time. I mean, that's like, I don't know, making Lennox Lewis fight Usyk to prove he's the greatest heavyweight of all time. It don't work. Lewis is in his 50s. Layla Ali's about my age. Is she not? She's in her mid to late 40s at least.
47.
There you go, man. She's my age. Clarissa, turn it in. Stick to talking shit and beating up mid-level girls that have world titles, but beating Layla Ali proves nothing. Look, face it, there ain't any decent women at your weight. It's just not there for you. So unfortunately, you'll just have to continue walking around wearing the diamond-encrusted GWOAT. I think Katie Taylor's the GWOAT for me, but, you know, Clarissa's done great things. Absolutely. Things I could only dream of. But fighting Layla Ali does nothing. Does absolutely nothing for your legacy. For me, it puts a dark blemish on it because she knows that she's got the beating of her. Maybe not 20 years ago, but she went around 20 years ago, so it's one of them. Just let it go, man.
Look, Ali's not fought since 2007. If we felt skeptical about seeing Manny Pacquiao get back in the ring after 5.5 years, how the hell are we going to, shouldn't be happening. But anyway, look, next weekend, Xander Zayas will become a world champion. He's, it's his time, isn't it? It's a vacant belt, but it doesn't matter. Everyone's got to start somewhere picking up the belts. And then we go into a bit of a quiet couple of weeks before we have the Moses Ataume, Dillian White Saudi cards to get stuck into in August. But Mr. JFT, thank you for joining me on this Sunday afternoon.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Thank you, everyone, for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And the channel will be getting moving this week. LT's Hot Takes will be coming at you tomorrow morning. Liam's Fight Night Picks will be coming live on Wednesday with the 2 days from the Rope It Dope podcast. Things are getting moving. Thank you very much, everyone. And I'll see you again soon.
Bye.